Thank you for joining us. The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for Vancouver City Council Position 5. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor, and I believe you met the other members of the editorial board. Just so you know, reporter Callie Hare is sitting in on this. She won't be asking questions in this form, but might want to speak with you later. And we are videotaping this. We'll post it unedited on the website for the benefit of our readers. With that, we will begin with introductions. Take just a moment to introduce yourselves, explain why you are running for this position, and then we'll move on to specific questions about policies. So anyway, we'll start with Ty.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much to the Editorial Board for having us in today. Appreciate the service that Columbian continues to provide to Vancouver. So I am a metro area native, born and raised, and first came to Vancouver in '92 for a job out on the east side, 112th Avenue, which we can hardly call the east side anymore, and have spent the majority of my adult life living in Vancouver. Had a 5-year stint where I went back east to get my MBA in North Carolina and worked in Baltimore for a little while, but then I've been back since 2005. My husband and I live in the Houck neighborhood, which we love the ability to walk and really feel part of that community. My career has been sales, marketing, operations for both public and private corporations, for nonprofits, and for startups. So I have a pretty wide range of professional experience behind me. My interest in running for city council comes out of a passion for this city, having spent the majority of my adult life here, that seeing so many opportunities that we have with the great resources we've been given. Our history, our location as a transportation corridor, those things all just really excite me, and very much passionate about how people feel about our community and how well they're able to feel connected to our community. So it's understanding that the streets we put in affect that, and the decisions we make about parks and public safety all affect how people feel about our community. So that's really my passion towards why I want to continue to serve on city council. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Dick?
Yeah, well, my name is David Regan, and I was born and raised here in Vancouver. Lived in the Houck neighborhood and lived in Minnehaha. So Dad lived in Houck, Mom lived in Minnehaha, kind of went back and forth. And it's interesting to see the progression where we've come from as a small boy, walking the streets, like for instance Main Street, seeing businesses in Main Street flourishing, and then kind of seeing them tank, but then seeing them coming back where they are now. It's super exciting. And I graduated Skyview High School, moved away for a while, and graduated UCLA, came back here, started my business around that same time. And I'm running for city council because I want to take the 15 years of business experience that I have, the 10 years of experience that I have working with faith-based nonprofit in the community, serving on boards, serving on neighborhood associations, working with folks with homelessness, mental health, and addiction, and working with a lot of troubled teens and youth when I was doing youth pastoring. I want to take all those experiences, and I feel like I can make a difference for city council. As some of you know, I was selected as one of the final 6 when Alicia Topper had stepped down, and I did not get that, but I didn't get that position, but that definitely solidified my decision to run for city council. So, and I'm here now. I think that I live now in the in the Wildwood neighborhood. Me and my wife and my son, 2.5-year-old toddler. He's a lot of high energy. And I've got 2 dogs, Charlie and Peanut Butter. And Charlie's cut like a lion dog. It's kind of funny. And my son jumps on top of him, rides him like a horse. So, yeah. And so I I love this city. My family's in this city. My friends are in this city. I've built relationships with thousands of folks in the community here. And I love seeing where we were, where we are now, and where we're going in the future. And I'm definitely a visionary, so I love seeing things come together. When the waterfront project, when they were talking about the waterfront project, I could just see it. Because I remember when it was, Boise Cascade and Alcoa down by the waterfront, and now to see what's going on there now is just super exciting. And I just want to be a part of things like that. But also being a part of connecting with residents, neighborhoods, and saying what are problems, what are struggles that you have in your neighborhoods, and how can we solve these problems. So that's why I decided to run for city council, because I just feel like my skills and abilities definitely will lend themselves to the city.
Great, thank you. Thanks to both of you. Well, excuse me. Start out with the Stronger Vancouver proposal, which would, as it stands right now, would increase a variety of taxes to raise about $30 million a year and provide an increase to a variety of services. As it's written right now, do you support that? What are your thoughts on that? We'll start with David.
Yeah, so Stronger Vancouver, I could definitely see why Stronger Vancouver was initially created, and what the community came together, and certain leaders in the community said, well, we feel like this would definitely strengthen the community. We have that issue with the 1% tax cap on property taxes. A lot of the issues that I'm hearing with, as I'm door knocking, as I'm talking to different residents, there's not a lot of financial transparency there. A lot of people, even myself, talking with the police chief and talking with folks at City of Vancouver, like what are some dollar figures? What can you give me some numbers for this? Can you give me some numbers for the replacement of Fire Station 3? I'm not sure. So that's from the police chief. So there's not a lot of real transparency as a lot of the outreach has gone out. Now, I've been to the fire stations, and I actually I went to the Public Works Center, the Operations Center, and they actually told me I was at that point I was one of, other than Diana Perez and I think Jeannie Stewart's seen the Operations Center. I believe Ty's probably seen the Operations Center, but they said I was the only candidate that actually visited the Operations Center of my own time. I thought this was really important because if I'm getting ready to make a $130 million decision for the city or vote on a policy, it's really important that I take a look at this center to see if this in fact does need replacing. So in short, to answer your question, a lot of the public safety issues I can see, the fire stations, the op center, homelessness, the homelessness initiatives that are in there, the economic development. But again, to this date, I've asked City of Vancouver, how much are we going to be spending on economic development in the Heights and those areas? Well, we're not quite sure. It could be this or this amount. It's like, it's very helpful for me to try and find out because I really want to focus on economic development. That's a big issue for me.
I'm sorry, when you ask that, do you mean under a Stronger Vancouver? Or?
Yes, under Stronger Vancouver, yeah. So like the economic packages, so the Heights and Section 30, those, especially Section 30, it's like if we're bringing 10,000, potentially 9 to 10,000 jobs into that area, I'd like to really focus on that investment because that's sounds like it could be a great return. I love parks. My son can say probably 50 words. Parks is one of them. So he gets really excited when we take him to the park. But I'm having an issue when I'm knocking on doors and talking to folks who the majority of most of those folks are concerned about, well, why don't we just work on some of the parks that we have right now? Why can't we just fix the ones that we have or fix a few of them? Why do we have to do them all at once? So I feel like it's a pretty big bite out of the apple in the entire package as it stands. I don't know if I can support at this moment the entire package because it's so large and there's a lot of repercussions that could come. But there's a lot of things that I can get behind and say, oh yeah, we definitely need this. And then there's a lot of things on there that I can say, well, it seems like this is what we want and I would love to do a lot of these things, but maybe break it apart, phase it.
So if it were solely up to you, you would probably scale it back a little bit.
Yes.
Include part of it. So you wouldn't totally be opposed to raising some taxes for needs that we see as necessary?
Well, the good thing about the property tax is the people decide on that. People say, okay, they decide, but there's also, what about the folks who voted no to raise those property taxes? And a lot of folks who are going to be voting no are concerned about being priced out of their homes. I'll just say on the record right now, I'm not okay with the B&O tax at all. The reason being is because it's a regressive tax. Also, with Oregon just implementing a B&O tax, that makes Vancouver very competitive. And I've even talked to several of my business owner friends in Portland, and I told them that what if Vancouver, they were considering moving here. And I said, well, let me ask a question. What if Vancouver implemented a B&O tax? And, well, I'd have to do the numbers, and I might just stay here in Portland. So I think it's dangerous for economy if we implement a B&O tax.
Great, thank you. Ty, your thoughts on Stronger Vancouver?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Stronger Vancouver is about an investment in our community. It's about investing in our public safety, in our economic development, and our quality of life. And that is the impetus. That's what started the whole process. Unfortunately, so we asked, as you know, a group of residents to sit down and look at a wide number of options. And they were presented with good, better, best, stellar from every single department in the city. And they filtered through that and came up with the things that they felt were most impactful. It took about 6 months to do that. Then they turned their attention to, well, how do we pay for that? And it took them twice as long to come up with a proposal for how to pay for it as it did to come up with the proposal of what they felt were good suggestions or good investments for our community. So as that came to council, unfortunately, it came across as the bulk of their work was the taxing and finances. And so the proposal really came across as a tax package. And I've said ever since we got that presentation that I have no interest in a tax package. If all we're going to do is talk about a tax package, let's just stop now. So that prompted the council to say, you know what, we need to go back to the beginning again and that proposal of the investments, and we need to take it out to the community and ask the community, one, are we on the right path here? Do you support these things? Where have we missed the mark? Or the things that aren't in this that we should be considering instead? And we are in the process now of tabulating all that response from the community in order to start to shape what the final package is going to be. There's certain parts of it that we've got no choice. We have to build a new operations center. We have to build some new fire stations and reinforce some others because we have a public service responsibility to this community, and those are essential public service items. The economic development portion, that one's a tough one to say exactly right now, because Stronger Vancouver is also a 10-year investment. It doesn't all come in year one. It's a 10-year investment that we're looking at. And it is impossible for us to predict today where our economic development opportunities are going to be over that 10-year period. And it could be that we get a employer that wants to move into Section 30 today. And so we need to be putting our investment towards there. It could be we don't get one today, but we get it in 7 years. And instead, today, we have somebody step up and say, you know what, I love this vision for the Heights, and I'm ready to run with the Heights. So that one's tough to be, that one's going to have to be more bound by a dollar figure, in my opinion, to be more bound by a dollar figure so that we have the flexibility to respond to the opportunities that come to us with these great opportunities in the community.
And let me just, real quick, just to clarify, where is Section 30?
Sorry, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, the worst named subdivision within or sub-area within the city. So Section 30 is the former gravel pits north of Tech Center. So it sits between 164th and 192nd. So as you are at Costco and 192nd and you look back west, that is the corner of Section 30. It's 440 acres. So a tremendous potential. David already mentioned, potentially 10,000 jobs in a kind of mixed-use environment there. And so, so we have these great opportunities throughout our community that we want to be ready to be partners to allow those economic development activities to happen. And then quickly, sorry, going off a little bit here. I've lived through at least 3 recessions in Clark County, if not 4 at this point. And I'm tired as a county, as a community, to always be the hardest hit and take the longest to recover. And it's depressing, as we all know, it's depressing. And so the more we can do to diversify our economy, I'm all for. So then the final portion of the capital portion of this, because then there's the whole operational side of Stronger Vancouver, but the final portion of the capital is investment in our parks. And parks are called out in our city charter. There's very few departments within the city of Vancouver that are explicitly called out in our charter. Parks is one that is called out in the charter. So the people who formed the charter back in the 50s felt that was an important responsibility of the city. As we've grown and as we've annexed, there are portions of our city that are underserved by parks. The northeast portion of our city is a park desert. So from a neighborhood park standpoint, on an equity basis, I feel like we owe it to those residents in that portion of the city to have access. Then there is also a look at community parks, the larger spaces, and looking at, again, Esther Short Park is at capacity. During the summer, we're at capacity. We need other venues throughout the city that we can be moving things to. So looking at some of the community parks to make new investments to try and be able to further activate those. Back to the original question. So I was on the council that asked the community group to do this. I am still on board that this is the right direction for us to go to be making investments. Over the next couple months here, we're going to be narrowing in what exactly are we talking about in those investments.
So if it were solely up to you, what changes would you make? How would you narrow it down?
Well, we've already started to do some things. There's some issues that we pulled out the last time we met. From the fire department, there was a proposal to require sprinklers in new construction. And I feel like that muddies the water of this, and that's more of a policy proposal. So I've asked, and council has pulled that out for separate consideration to go through a separate pathway. There was one other that we pulled out, and it's escaping my mind right now.
But what would you do personally if it were solely up to you?
So, it's the next step is going to be, how do we pay for this? And that's where it's going to get tougher. There may be some community parks that don't happen this time. we're going to have to, and then there's service level issues on the operations side. That's where things are going to get tough. To David's point about B&O, there's so few tools allowed to us as a city. I'm not willing to say no, but I'm definitely willing to say now is not the right time, because of a couple things. One, we had the sales tax exemption, changes to the sales tax exemption just take place, and the state did changes to the state B&O. So really have to understand what the implications are of all of those taxing changes that happened at the state before I think it would be wise for us to start talking about it. So that is going to be a year and a half from now before we really start to understand that. And so those kind of and that puts it outside the time frame of Stronger Vancouver. So I think that's the direction the council is going to go, but I don't know.
So if let's say the proposal as it is right now, and obviously there will be changes.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to go in the process. As it is right now, David, would you vote in favor of it?
As it is currently right
Yes.
now, as the entire package sits as it is right now, I would have to say no, because those are what most of my supporters and constituents, prospective constituents, are saying. I'm listening to people. Another thing about that, why I feel like currently right now I'd say no, is because there's about 40 or 50 business owners that I know that I'm friends with in downtown, Central, East Vancouver. I've done a bit of my own, just with, for instance, the business community. I've done a bit of my own outreach and survey and asked them if they've been asking every single business owner that I know, that I've talked to, that I've encountered, roughly in the high 40s that I've spoken with just in the last few weeks. And I've asked them, have you heard of Stronger Vancouver? Only 6 have said yes. The rest have said, what's that? I'm like, well, it's a huge tax initiative that could hit us, and I can potentially implement a B&O, and I have to walk them through the entire process and about the 35 different projects, and so something's going on there. I think we need to look at the city and say, okay, are we doing a good job of outreach? Are we really doing a good job of outreaching to the business community? Are we doing a good? It's again about the same numbers as I go knocking door to door. Those are some of my questions. Have you heard of Stronger Vancouver? It's the biggest thing that's getting ready to hit Vancouver here in quite some time. Could affect you this way, this way, this way, this way. Again, most folks are, what's that? I mean, I'd say probably about 20% of people say, yeah, I know what that is.
More of them need to read the Columbian.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Ty, would you vote for it as it stands right now?
Are you giving me a I get it or I don't get it choice?
Yes, up or down vote.
If it's a choice between I get something or I don't get something, then yes. If it's we're a long ways from having our final package, but,
sure.
But
yeah,
if it's either we get something or we don't get something, then yes, I'm going to take what I've got right now. Yeah.
Any other questions about the Stronger Vancouver?
No. Only to the extent that there's a component in there that does try to address homelessness at some level. Can you describe that, or kind of elaborate your position on that, or where you see that?
Yeah. Given the feedback of our community right now, if Stronger Vancouver doesn't do something to address our homeless situation, I think it would fall flat on voters, because that is the number one issue people are talking about is our homeless situation. So it must, in my mind, it must include something there, and to point out the differentiation, the Affordable Housing Fund that voters passed, its primary focus is around building housing, and the Stronger Vancouver money is primarily about operational support of our homeless system. So they're two different things. Could we technically take money from Prop 1 and do the same thing? Yes, but I don't. But then we start to stray from what the original intent was. So this is meant to address the functional everyday kind of issues with homelessness.
David, what are your thoughts about the homelessness aspect of Stronger Vancouver?
Yeah, I would be in 100% support of the operational package of Stronger Vancouver, as long as the city adopts a comprehensive plan on what they're going to do in the city level. Because I think it's really important to do a cost-benefit analysis of the way in which we are addressing homelessness. And I think there's a dire need for warm bodies to go out on the street and connect with other people, make relationship, create partnerships, and help them work out of their situations and work into housing, work into programs, whatever. I mean, we have to have outreach teams. I do believe that, but I also think that the city needs to revamp the entire way in which they look at homelessness, and I believe there's going to be that. Probably going to be included in the Alpha Project analysis report. I would assume.
Do you think the city has not done a comprehensive review of how it's approaching the issue?
No.
Ty is.
No, we have been very reactionary in our how we're addressing homelessness. People come complain, and then we respond. Now. People on the outside will say the fact that our council has responded is pretty significant, because it important historically. If we go back 5 years, the general tone of the city was homelessness is not our problem. That's up to the county to deal with it from a social service standpoint. It is not the city's responsibility. There has been a extreme evolution within the city. In the intervening time, to understand that, well, it may be the county's, from a state standpoint, it may be the county's responsibility, but nobody shows up to county council meetings and says, do something about homelessness. They show up to city council meetings and say, do something about homelessness. So came to the realization we had to start addressing it, but it has been very reactionary to that point. And that is why, very excited about hiring a homeless services coordinator who can help us a couple ways. One is he becomes, that position becomes the central point of contact for the city, because we know the city was doing a lot around homelessness in each of these different departments, but it was uncoordinated. So now we have a central person. But that person also can help council start to develop what is that strategy. I think I mentioned at the beginning, not in this interview, previous interview, that my last position was all about logic models and theories of change. So, what do we think we can make happen, and how do we think we can make it happen? And that's with so many things that we do as a city, that kind of thought process is missing, because also an important component is measurement in that. So very excited with this new person coming on to be able to develop that kind of a framework, so that we understand why we're providing a day center. We understand why we're doing the Talking Tracks program. We understand where it fits into this system. Now we have to do that. The city is a coordinator within this. We're not going to go out and create huge amounts of funds in order to do these things. We are a coordinator. So we have to operate within the system that the county and Council of Homeless as our continuing care provider outline, but we need to be more directed in what we're doing.
Hey, David, do you think that Ty mentioned the homeless services coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a wise investment for the city?
I do believe that is, and actually I've met with him. He's a good guy. I feel like he has a lot of the right tools. He's got the right heart, that's for sure. That's the most important part about that job, in my opinion, is having the right heart and the right perspective. I think that's an absolute must. I mean, when you have that position, which is a full-time position, you have another person at the city level who's doing other functions as well, and then sort of having to take over, do this. Yeah, that needs to be its own individual function, and that person can also help liaise between the county and the city, and just really just create that full-time partnership. That I definitely think that we need that full-time position.
So to play devil's advocate, doesn't
Sure.
that just add to the bureaucracy in the city spending? Do you think it will be an effective expenditure?
No, because if it's the right hire, he could save the city money. Because if that person is nursing this full time and really doing the job that we're expecting them to do, then I think in the end, it's going to close some gaps, which we all know that gaps can cost money. So gaps in services cost money when they're struggling with homelessness, when they're trying to get into housing, when they're trying to get into addictive or mental health services. I mean, those gaps are what's crucial. I mean, it's a 21-day window from the time somebody falls out of a house and into homelessness to get them back on their feet. Otherwise, it becomes a lifestyle to them. And so, when you have this position that's now been filled with a full-time, that's going to be their full-time position. Previously, it was sort of a part-time, while another person is dealing with economic development or community. And so you really need somebody who can be full-time working with service providers, working with the county. So yeah, I think that's a wise investment in my opinion.
Going back a couple of years, did you support Proposition 1?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Okay. Do you think it hasn't been used effectively?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to like a comprehensive plan. If the city developed Proposition 1 because they said we need to tackle homelessness from a housing perspective. I have a different perspective about homeless, especially chronically homeless, those who are kind of out on the streets. I believe it's more of a heart perspective and what's going on with somebody, what's going on in the inside. So Proposition 1. Well, it depends on what it is. So, I don't believe every single person out on the streets is dealing with addiction, but there's a pretty high level of people who are. There's a pretty high level of people who are dealing with mental health. And a lot of that community is the community who is tying up a lot of emergency services. They're tying up a lot of, cleanup services that the city is chewing a lot of time and energy from the police force currently. The police force is pointing to a lot of that community is one of the main reasons why they're strained on the police force right now. And to answer your question, how would I deal with this? I think looking at the system I've talked about before, Everett's implemented a system up there. I would take a lot of where they basically partner a social worker with a law enforcement officer, and there's city-county partnership, and they've really targeted chronically homeless who are dealing with mental health and addiction. And it's so almost like one big giant diversion program, but the city and the county both said, okay, we have to cut through red tape and get people services immediately. We need to get people off if they're dealing with mental health or if they're dealing with addiction. We have to get them off the streets and into services overnight, because the repercussion is, or the alternative is that they are they're committing crimes, or they're camping, or they're just tying up a lot of emergency services. So I would take a lot of the components of their system and implement a lot of systems down here. So, but again, there's that city-county partnership that we need. We need to work very, very strong with the county, and we need. I personally would say, hey, this is our problem. This is our issue. The city and the county. This is both of us. It's not this one person or the other person. We've got to solve this together, and we got to come together to deal with different groups. So, circling back to Proposition 1, do you feel like it was a wise investment? Do you feel like it was a wise decision? That was your question. And I would say when we're talking about the chronically homeless, I can give you half a dozen stories about folks who are in a lot of the housing that Proposition 1 funds, and they're still stuck, they're still broken, they're not really dealing with any deep-rooted issues. I mean, they've taken their, before when they were homeless out on the streets or struggling with homelessness out on the streets, and they've gone into that housing, they've recreated their exterior inside their new homes, and they're still really dealing with issues, and they're not really getting the deep help that they need. So
do either of you know, does the county have a homeless service coordinator?
No.
No, not a person, no.
Do you think that would be a good idea?
Well, go ahead.
Because
Tread lightly on dictating what another government body should do and how it should organize itself. And the county is stretched with their capabilities in general. Having a counterpart, I think would be helpful. No, having very specific, but I think as our homeless services coordinator gets settled in, he's going to be able to figure out who at the county is his best connection and be able to start leveraging that relationship.
I want to go back, Ty. Do you think Proposition 1 has been effective?
Yeah, so yes, yeah, we have built over 300 new units of housing, and we have been able to preserve another 200 units of housing. So that's important. Is it enough? No. Our demand for housing at the lower end of the economic spectrum is much larger than that. When we have 1,000 students in the Evergreen School District and 1,000 students in the Vancouver School District that are functionally homeless, we've got a problem. And we don't see the majority of our homeless population. They're doubled up. They are living in vehicles. They're hiding out someplace. We don't see the majority of them. What we see is the people who are dealing with primarily dealing with drug and mental health issues. That's the visible homelessness that we see. But the majority of our homeless, we don't see. And a lot of them are working families who just, when rents went from $900 for a two-bedroom to $1,400 for a two-bedroom, just can't make it work. So Proposition 1 is important because it does seed the price points that the market isn't going to naturally do on its own. So down at the bottom end of the income spectrum. But it's a small drop, and the only way that it truly gets solved is if we have a state or federal housing policy. And we're a long ways from that. So what we're trying to do in all these areas is trying to manage as best we can and get better at managing as best we can. But we're out here on our own when we really need some partners to make effective changes.
I wanted something we touched on. How's the city government's relationship with the county these days?
Yeah. It's improving. It's improving. There's more stability at the county now. So that allows for relationships to start building again. And I've been council member Meg DeVee and I have been sitting on the Council for the Homeless Board together. So I've been enjoying getting to know him there, and have also been interacting with other council members around the topic. So things are getting better. And in some ways, though, I say we've gone back to historical tensions between the city and the county. Because there's always been tension between the city and county, and now we're back to more historical tensions, and that's a place we can work from much more effectively.
David, how do you view the relationship between the city and the council, the city and the county?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to work in between both. So I work with the city, I work with the county over the last 15 years, where I hear other people talking about, there can be tension, or there might be a little bit of tension. I see opportunity. I'm very used to working across the board with people who don't think like me, who maybe have a difference of opinions. That doesn't scare me. I love making relationship and connection. I see a lot of opportunity there for us to make stronger relationships and connections there, and I do see that coming up here in the near future, where there is going to be a stronger partnership with the city and the county. And I think definitely looking at our homeless people who are struggling with homelessness, whether it's chronic homelessness or, like Ty talked about, people who are struggling with housing issues, that's where I see an opportunity to lend resources to each other. So, for instance, what you were asking Ty about whether the county should hire a homeless coordinator. I think I'd love, at the city level, I'd love to say, hey, can we lend him to you? Where can we share resources so that citizens in our county and our city are not there's not frivolous waste going on. We're going to do our own thing, you're going to do your own thing. Let's actually create a partnership. Let's create a task force and again, I'll just point to what they've done up in Everett and Snohomish County. I think that's what a lot of the cities and the counties have done up there. It's remarkable the amount of partnership. You have a county social worker sitting in the car of a Marysville police officer, and vice versa. You have a lieutenant inside of a county sheriff inside of a city building. It's just like there's a lot of just lending of resources for the betterment of that entire community. So I love things like that. I love connecting the pieces of the puzzle and just saying, hey, let's not waste any dollars here. Mm-hmm. This is for the benefit. It's not you versus us, or hey, we're coming into the urban growth area. It's let's partner up together.
Do you know about how many people in Snohomish County, how many social workers are dedicated to that, what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a four person program. So I think there's four social workers, and then 4 law enforcement officers that are sort of like your neighborhood officers. They're all great people, by the way, just great people. They all have, again, that right heart, that right mentality where, one is a law enforcement officer, but this guy is this huge teddy bear. I did a ride along with them, and he's just a super loving guy. He's like a Tyler Shavers of their department. I mean, just really cares about people. And I think that's important with whatever you do when it comes to homeless services. You have to have the right people behind the desk to help them, because most people are struggling with brokenness inside, or they're struggling with safety, or they're struggling with shame to some degree or another. That's the common denominator in all those different groups, is they're all struggling with some form of shame because they lost a job, and oh my gosh, I'm a piece of dirt, or even to out on the streets where somebody just, that's a lifestyle for them, that they are that piece of dirt, which they're not. They're gold.
Hey, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So doesn't the city have coordinated people that actually go out and work with the homeless, like one-on-one?
So no, we don't. Again, we're in a coordination role. So the people working with the homeless are service providers, Community Service Northwest, SHARE. Those are the people out doing the street outreach. Now, obviously, police department is interacting, and there was said, people like Tyler Shavers are huge assets to us. But also building on that, the city just received a $340,000 grant so that we can have mental health people starting to ride along with our police officers. And that is going to be a huge benefit. Because again, a lot of this comes back to things that we want to do, and then where do we get the money to pay for it? So getting a grant like this is really significant for us.
Just one more homelessness.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because we could spend an entire
Yeah,
session.
Yeah, we
on
could.
that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
How would you assess the navigation center? What changes would you make there? So, and let's keep this quick. What do you think, David?
Sure. So the navigation center, again, I'm just going to point back to that comprehensive plan. The navigation center currently, because the police aren't equipped to deal with what's going on there, and they've actually, from what I understand, with talking with a lot of folks in the police department, all they can really do is sort of show up there and be an aid and be security. But again, we're not getting people the deep help that they need. From what I understand, the navigation center, the original goal was to put it in there as a place where people can actually get services to deal with what's going on in their life. And it seems to more be like a place where people can kind of just show up and do their laundry and, charge their cell phone. I thought that was to be a secondary service, not a primary service. So again, I think the reason why I wouldn't have voted for the navigation center to go if we didn't have a comprehensive plan as a city, then I wouldn't have voted. If they would have asked me and said, will you vote for this? I would say, yeah, once we can get a comprehensive plan and get a cost-benefit analysis of how we're tackling homelessness at the city level, then I would totally support a place like that, because it's just become a very hard burden on the residents in the area. But I'm not for just throwing it out. We have to make it work. We absolutely have to make it work. But again, that's why I would say I would take a lot of components from what's going on up in like Everett, Snohomish County, which I actually took Gary Medvedji with me. Him and I went up there to go check out the system, because I believe that we need to partner with that. And I've been talking with Chuck Atkins. I think to implementing a system like that, like up in Everett, implementing a system down here, I would totally vote for that policy, because I think that would be a solve to a lot of the navigation center. And then we can sort of separate the people who really need help, and then from the people who are being victimized by other folks in that community, because there are people who are being victimized, which is prohibiting folks who really need help from getting that help.
Ty, how would you assess the navigation center?
So,
and it's still early.
Yeah. So first is to the vote point. If I had to take the vote over again, I would take the vote over again. We needed something. We had people screaming at us to do something, and we had to do something. So there are a lot of people being helped at the navigation center. About a month ago, I was out doorbelling in Harney Heights, and was at Grand and down towards the Mill Plain end of Grand, and came across a gentleman who was not in good shape. It was a very, very hot day, and he was struggling to get up and over the hill to get to the navigation center. And so drove him over there. I'm not here. I don't know why he was in the situation he was in, but he was in bad shape, and he needed to be inside where services were available to him. So there are a lot of people who are being helped by it. There is a lot of room for improvement. I've been one of the things I've wanted to see happen for a while is our Talking Trash program more focused. Talking Trash is where we actually pay homeless people or people who are transitioning out of homelessness to do cleanup around the city. So I've been advocating for a while that I wanted them to be much more focused just in the area around the navigation center, because it's the pushback was, well, they walk through and there's no trash anymore. Well, and it's like, that's not the point. The point is not the trash. The point is I want people in orange vests wandering the neighborhood to give a sense of security to the neighbors, that somebody's keeping an eye out. And I'm expecting that we're going to probably be moving more in that direction. So I actually had the opportunity So at this point now, I've had the opportunity to visit 4 different homeless programs. First, we went down to San Diego and visited Alpha Project, which changed my mindset for sure about what was the potential.
So in favor of that?
Yes. They have 300 people, men and women, living in a pop-up tent. Dogs separated. The men and women are separated by portable office dividers, and if they have created a community culture there that allows that to happen, and on site is county health, mental health services, all those things that they need, the housing support, the job support, it's all right there. It's also easier to do because there's 300 people there, and there's a matter of scale. But regardless, how are we getting closer to a model like that? Yeah.
Okay, so you went there. You said
Oh, I'm sorry. Went there. We went to the Colorado Coalition for Homeless, which that was another amazing program in Denver, where they actually started. They thought they could solve homelessness through a health clinic, and then realized no, they had to do housing as well. But they have this most amazing health facility that looks like the best doctor's office you could think of. And it's designed, it has a trauma-informed design, meaning they did everything possible to not include triggers in the building's design. So for instance, the stairwells from the first floor to the second floor are glass, so people don't feel claustrophobic. They have pods where where if you go in to see and you're assigned a doctor, you actually are assigned a doctor, and you go in to see your doctor, and the doctor's talking to you, and you say, I got a toothache. They can actually walk you down to the end of the hall, and there's a dental chair, and they'll bring somebody up from the dental clinic downstairs. So this amazing program, extremely complex financing, and want to steal their CFO. And then on that same trip, we went down to Colorado Springs and saw the Springs Mission, and which is a campus situation. They're providing some great services. They're expanding. They're growing and developing there. Not quite as clean and neat as the other two, but still doing some great things. And then the fourth was Portland Rescue Mission, and going and seeing the downtown mission, as well as their programs on the east side.
So you're all for the Alpha Project.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I haven't been to Alpha Project, but I've done a ton of research with Alpha Project, followed them. I think Portland Rescue Mission does a fantastic job. I've been connected to Portland Rescue for years. I used to take my youth kids down to Portland Rescue Mission, and we would serve on Thursday nights, serve the homeless. We'd go do Night Strike, which is underneath the bridge close to Portland Rescue Mission, and I love their operation. I also love Open House Ministries. I know those are two faith-based models, but I think one of the reasons why they work so well is because of the support and the accountability that they have. It's a partnership model, like what I call an interdependent model. So it means we're important, so are they. It's not your life is more important than ours. How can I give you as much resources as possible? That's a codependent system. It's not an independent system like go do whatever you want. We're going to do our own. It's an interdependent. It's a partnership model, and that's why I think it works. And neurobiology would say you have to have accountability if you want to help somebody, whether it's they're just they're dealing with chronic anxiety or schizophrenia. In order to heal, then they are healable. But neurobiology would definitely say that folks need accountability in order to kind of come out of the hole that they've dug themselves into or that they fell into.
So do either of you see any advantage for the city and seeking to annex all or part of Fire District 6, which is Hazeldale, Philida, Salmon Creek? I don't know who wants to go first.
Well,
Okay.
well, I can tell you, I have friends that are in Fire District 6 that I know of. They say they're overworked. I think I think what we're doing in Fire District 5, I think we should be slow and let that play out. I don't have enough raw data. I would need to see data to see like whether or not we should annex into that area and take those. I mean, eventually we're gonna, as a city, probably move into those areas. But I know I've heard mixed reviews at the city level whether or not they want to take Hazeldale area over. I think that's going to be the last part. I think when they come in and they want to do a little hook. So I don't know. I don't have enough data about that, to be honest with you. I don't have enough numbers from the fire department about that, but I can tell you currently right now from what I hear from some of the firemen that I inquired about that station about. It's funny you asked about that. I literally just talked to them a few days ago, and they said they're overworked. So I'm like, okay, well, are they underfunded? Are they not getting enough tax dollars to provide enough manpower there? So
Annexation is annexation back to those traditional tensions between the city and the county. That is annexation. Unfortunately, our previous agreement is now expired, and the city has no immediate plans for annexation. The difficult thing is the finances behind it on both sides. The county, as we know, is struggling financially, and that could greatly change the dynamics of their finances, and that has to be taken into account. The sustainability of any particular area in its tax base is also an issue. So there are two different minds, and depending on the moment, I'm of one of two minds. One mind is, you know what, we have enough on our plate just keeping up with the boundaries that we have right now, and how can we try and do the best with the boundaries we have. The other one is there. Now, Betty Sue Morris would disagree with this, but the general feeling is that the Growth Management Act says that at some point, if it's in Vancouver's growth area, we're supposed to annex it. So the longer we take to annex it, the more development happens in patterns that may not be fiscally sustainable to the city. And so it's tough. You all know well that they tried to form Three Creeks as a city and came to the conclusion that they couldn't finance themselves. And probably things are improving that way, but that's also a hesitation on the part of the state. Well, do we? It's a lot of political battle to try and annex there, and it could end up not helping us financially and potentially hurting us financially. So it's a fine line. If the state wants it to happen, the state's going to have to figure out a way to help us transition through this, so that Clark County doesn't get destroyed in the process.
Speaking of financial sustainability, will you support the 1% property tax increase for next year?
Yes.
But David, would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Die if we don't.
But
I don't quite understand why governmental entities do it that way. Why not tie it to the consumer price index so you don't have to have a battle every year?
Ask our state legislature. Ask Tim Eyman.
yeah.
And that was Linda Smith's thing, wasn't it? Didn't Linda Smith get that Initiative 601 passed? I thought that was hers.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was a starve the beast. Where the city family, Washington Association of Cities is, well, actually no, it's more the county family is trying to attack that issue with the legislature because the cities are feeling it and counties are feeling it probably more intensely.
A couple of quick other issues. Are you in favor of an electric scooter program in the city?
It's funny. I just bought a few scooters for the family. So yeah, me and my wife, we've been playing on the scooters. My son can't ride on it, so they're fun. Don't get me wrong, they're very fun. But somebody's gonna have to pay the bill eventually when there's 50 scooters in the Columbia River. I mean, it's so whether the scooter company ups the pricing or, well, I'll just say I'll vote whatever my constituents say, and I've been talking to a lot of them, and a lot of them say I wouldn't support the scooters. I don't know why we're getting scooters, so that's just me. But they're fun.
So you'd say no?
Based on my constituents, yeah, yes, I would. So
Ty, what are your thoughts?
they're fun though. Please quote me on that. I just bought 2, so.
We are going through rapid transition in transportation right now, both in terms of preferences and in terms of technology. And I hate to stand in the way of progress. However, I have major concerns about how they end up getting used. So my number one concern is, does a pedestrian feel safe in their space on the sidewalk? And anything that deters from that pedestrian feeling safe in their space is something that I'm concerned about. So I have been in a number of cities now where scooters are being used, and even if there is other space, they're still being used on the sidewalks, and as a pedestrian we're having to fight them. The mayor and I were back in DC for a conference, and we'd gone up to the National Zoo, and we were walking back to the subway station, which is a downhill, and a wide sidewalk at that point, a very wide sidewalk. And from a distance, we watched the immovable object meet the whatever force, irresistible force. And down the street are 2 mothers pushing double wide strollers, walking side by side. And up the sidewalk are coming 2 scooters. And we're back there. And if I was a millennial, my phone would have been out. I would have recording the thing like that, but or a 20-something. Unfortunately not. We're just watching this going, what is going to happen here? And finally, at the last minute, the scooters, they lost the game of chicken there. But those kind of situations I'm concerned about Vancouver, because in our downtown core, we don't have wide sidewalks. And we don't have protected bike lanes. And so I'm not sure right now where they go in a way that interacts well with our population. So right now, no, I'm not a supporter. That being said, we are seating a transportation commission, and we're asking the transportation commission that's going to be one of the first things that they tackle is scooters and what does that look like? for
Seems
our
like
future?
there'd be enough best practices out there now to
Yeah, right.
help inform that committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice not to be the guinea pig, but you can learn
There's
from
been
it.
a lot of false starts.
So, really quick, what do you envision for the Heights area
Yeah.
and for the Tower Mall?
Yeah. So I am envisioning a vibrant community core, a place that draws people in, that draws people out of those surrounding neighborhoods into an environment where they can find restaurants and coffee shops and access to a great park system, and I want it to be leveraging the assets that are up there already. Tower Mall has long been like, my gosh, why can't this be something
So
more?
do you think that will prove to be a wise investment? For the
I
city?
think so. I think there's a lot of people who are very so the things I'm concerned about. There's a lot of apprehension in the neighborhood right now because this represents substantial change. And two, I'm also concerned about that housing pressure because that I think it's going to make that area a lot more desirable, and especially on the south side, there's really only one street of affordable housing on the south side anymore, and I don't think that's going to exist after this is there. And on the north side, where there is more affordable housing, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure there. So this is an area where as a city, we've got to be very cognizant about displacement.
David, do you think that will prove to be a wise investment for the city?
Well, regardless of whether or not it's an investment or not, I think more important for me is there's a right way of saying we're going to do this and a wrong way of saying we're going to do this. And when I'm talking to a lot of the neighborhoods in that area, as I've been door knocking, making relationships, and people saying, "Yeah, we'll support you." And here's, I asked, "What about the Heights?" I went to this meeting. I asked these questions. Nobody knows. There's sort of a disconnect between what's actually going on in the neighborhood. You have to bring the residents and the neighbors involved because there's going to be some massive impacts in there. Ty touched about a little bit about affordable housing. There's some folks in the area who are concerned that they might get pushed out. Is development in that area gonna, is it gonna impact traffic? I mean, there's a lot of concerns that folks in the area are talking about. I mean, I spoke with the owner of Vanco. There's a community there that he's concerned about. It's not even so much a business. It's actually a community. I've been golfing there for the last 15 years. So that's really important. Where people just again feel like there's a bit of disconnect. They're not getting answers to what's going on. There's just not a lot of. I hear the word transparency a lot. So is it a wise investment to not make the neighbors feel like there's transparency or like that they're being brought into the decision making? No, I don't think that's a wise investment. That's one issue. That's one part of the investment. And then the design of the projects. I mean, there's some great designs that look like, that looks like just the design itself could be a wise investment by itself. But when you put it in the middle of a neighborhood like that, a lot of folks are being displaced from the Tower Mall area, and they just kind of. I have some personal stories there with some folks where again they just kind of feel like they got crowded out. The city didn't really do a good partnership. I mean, NAMI Mental Health Services are great folks there. Another Bethesda Church. I mean, all of them have a story, and it kind of seems to be. There's no transparency. I don't feel heard. I'm the city's not doing a good job of communicating. They're not doing a good job of listening. So again, it's just is it wise to do things like that to folks in the community? Again, there's a right way of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then there's a wrong way of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I just feel like right now there needs to be more outreach and better outreach, reaching folks in those communities. I mean, having somebody go door to door if we have to, just so people can feel like they have a voice in the community.
So I'm going to push back a little bit here. There are many projects in the city where I'd say the city has fallen down on its outreach. The Heights is not one of them. The collaborative process that has been gone through to do that outreach, to spend time in those communities, to ask people their opinions, those designs were all based upon the feedback of those communities. And there's been a lot of effort there. There are definitely other projects that I have a lot of concerns about, but the Heights is one where I think the right things have been done. And now there's a difference between because when you go out and you do that, sometimes things are going to happen anyways, and you feel like, well, I didn't get heard. And it's not a matter of not getting heard. It's a matter of this community decision.
We'll move on then. Why don't give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and please mention any endorsements that you'd like to share. We'll start with David.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate all the support that I'm already getting. I just want to thank every single person out in the community who's reached out, who's donated to my campaign. And those are endorsements that I like to focus on. I like to focus on my next door neighbor. I like to focus on a nice gal down the road who put one of my yard signs in. As I've been going and door knocking in neighborhoods, I see my personal yard signs in places where I'm like, oh, I don't even know how that person wound up with one, but yay. That's awesome. So I just want to say I really this is a community that I've grown up in. I have relationships in. I have family, and my business has been here. So I have a lot of reasons why I want to see this community grow and flourish. I have a 2.5-year-old son. The decisions that I make on city council today are going to affect him 15, 20 years from now. And I think about that. I weigh that in as I'm outreaching, I want to make the best decisions possible for not only for him, but for every single person in this community that has a 2.5-year-old son, for every person in this community who might not have any children. So I just appreciate all the support that I've gotten. My website has a list of different people who have endorsed my campaign. So I just appreciate everybody's support, and and if I knock on your door, please open up. So yeah, that's what I would say to most folks out there.
Great, thank you. Ty, final thoughts?
So first is, I'm very appreciative of the voters of Vancouver who gave me the opportunity to serve them 4 years ago, and I've dedicated those 4 years to really understanding what are the issues and what are the tools that are available to take advantage of opportunities within our community. So I come with the community's investment in me and the knowledge that I've gained so far. I've got over 250 individuals and organizations that have endorsed my campaign so far, which puts me in the ballpark of Jack Berkman, because if you know Jack, he's all about the endorsement. So I'm up in Jack Berkman territory. I want to just share, because David brought up kids, and I want to share a couple things of my personal experience. One, 5 years ago, I took the opportunity to become a lunch buddy. And first he was at Houck, then he got transferred down to Fruit Valley. And I've watched this young man progress from kindergarten to now up into 5th grade. And it's been a slowly piecing things together. But his mother this year told me, I had brought up Courtyard Village. And she shared with me after I had given this speech that she and her kids were displaced at Courtyard Village. So it really brought that back full circle, and Courtyard Village being the incident that caused the city to go out and run Proposition 1 to create the Affordable Housing Fund. Secondly, about 3 years ago, out of the blue, I get a text message from Representative Monica Stonier, and she says, "Hey, you guys still think about kids because we have one that needs a home." And that began a 6-month process, or a 6-month time frame in which we had a little one living with us. And luckily, we still get to be involved. And that is such a blessing in our lives. So again, back to these long-term things. And then the third thing that a place that's heavy on my heart is I sit on the board of Daybreak Youth Services. You haven't been on a nonprofit board until you've been on a board of one going through crisis. But we are fighting hard because we are fighting for our youth. We're fighting for those kids to give them every possible chance. So many of them are coming from horrible trauma situations, and we owe it to them to give them every single possible chance. So those are things that are on my heart and the things that I bring with me when I come into council chambers. I am asking the voters to let me live out my passion for 4 more years here.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for your time.